Just another girl. Chapter 8. Other than that, as much as I tried to explore my feelings, it was very difficult to understand why I liked being Valerie. I loved the clothes, but there was something else. I just enjoyed being a girl and seeing myself as a girl, moving, talking and playing as a girl, that everyone saw me as a girl, but, especially, to feel like a girl. One afternoon, in the playground there was a party for a boy younger than us, like in first or second grade, but 4 older children were there, surely cousins or brothers of the guests. We were in third, they must have been fourth or fifth. They were taller and faster than us. That day I was wearing a short sleeveless denim dress and my white tennis shoes. They brought some balls from the party and we got organized to play dodgeball and split up to select the teams. The leader of my team was called Roberto. He was almost a head taller than me, strong, with a square jaw, black hair, and honey-colored eyes. The first one he chose was me, then his cousin Jason, who asked him to choose Sandy, and finally Alexa. Erica and Anna were left on the other team with Anthony and James. We started playing and everything seemed normal, but Roberto was close to me all the time, as if taking care of me. Every time someone wanted to hit me with the ball, he crossed and caught the ball so that they didn't hit me. "Don't worry, I'll take care of you, stay behind me," he told me. On the one hand, I wanted him to let me play in peace, but on the other hand, I must admit that I was enjoying the boys' attention. At some point, to avoid being hit by a ball, I threw myself on the floor. He immediately came to ask if I was okay. He put his arm around me behind my back. He offered his other hand to support me. I hesitated for a moment. I put my hand on his and he practically carried me to stand next to him. It was a feeling that I had never had, seeing him so close. Feeling so fragile, so vulnerable and at the same time so protected. I didn't even know what to say. I just kept smiling like a fool until someone asked, "Can we continue playing now or are you going to continue your romance?" I felt my face turn red. He laughed and we continued playing. That was it. But when Sandy and I were going back to my apartment, he asked me, "You liked Roberto, right?" "No," I answered defensively. "Of course you liked him. We all noticed. You were drooling." "Well, yes, but it wasn't that I liked him." "Ha ha ha. So what? Did you like the clouds in the sky?" she said mockingly. "Seriously. I don't like boys." "Well, you hide it very well, girl. Anyone would think that you liked him a lot." "No, I mean, I did feel. I really liked that he treated me like that. It made me feel special. But I do not know. Do you like Sarah?" she asked me. "Yes, I think she is beautiful, but not like that. I like to see her and I would like to be like her." She looked at me weirdly. "Do you like boys?" I asked her. "Obvious. Some, not all, but don't tell me Roberto isn't handsome. If you almost kissed him there in front of everyone." I turned red again. "Of course not. Of course, you did. You liked him. Haha." She started running and I chased her. "You liked him," she yelled as she ran. That night, I inevitably thought about the subject. I repeated the scene 200 times in my mind. I tried to imagine what I would have felt if I had kissed him. I tried to get excited about the idea, and I remembered what I felt the day I played the wedding with Carlos. I came to the conclusion that I liked feeling this way and being treated this way. But the boys. I think what really bothered me was that I didn't like them as much as I could like girls. That I didn't get excited thinking about them and they weren't attractive to me as it happened to me with some girls. Although with girls there was also always the element of wanting to be like them. Since then, and for a long time I tried to convince myself that I could make myself like boys. After all, in my situation, the easiest thing was to convince myself that I liked boys, otherwise, I would always be a weird. That was the internal conflict, with which I dealt alone at night, but I also had the external conflict. The one that happened in full view of everyone when Valerie manifested herself during Mario's hours. If I'm honest, from that time on, I didn't understand how my mom and sister could not realize something was up. At first, we were careful, we tried to keep the clothes in their place and hung or folded them just as we had found them. We also always tried not to dirty the clothes so that when my sister took them out, the clothes would be as if nobody had used them, and since my sister wasn't super careful with her things, it didn't matter if the clothes were a bit wrinkled, but it wasn't always possible to store everything exactly as it was. That was just one of the problems, another was the mistakes. When Carlos stayed later because his mother still hadn't arrived or just because we were halfway through the cartoon, we tried to be careful with how we behaved, but there was no lack of error. Sigmund Freud would call it failed act, in which Carlos would say things like, "Valerie, can you pass me the salt?" Those kinds of mistakes, of course, over the course of a year, happened several times. I could see that my sister noticed, but my mom didn't seem to notice anything. My sister sometimes complained that her things were moved. Once she left her room very angry, with my mom in front of me to ask me if I knew where her lip gloss was. Of course, I put on a face of not knowing what she was talking about and my mom said to her, "Oh Anna, how is he going to know?" I just laughed silently, but that prompted my sister to continue evidencing every mistake that we committed. "How odd. Have you seen Mom? My headband has hair that is not mine." Glaring at me. Whose could it be? My mom answered things like, "Oh my daughter, if you don't know, how am I going to know?" I think that deep down, or even on the surface, I also wanted my mom to realize it because the mistakes were more and more frequent. "What were my white sneakers doing under your bed? Are these stockings yours or why were they in your drawer?" I cynically replied that I didn't know anything about what she was talking about. As every man would. "Do you know who wore my yellow dress? It's dirty and I haven't used it." "No, how am I supposed to know?" I asked her. "Are you sure you don't know, Valerie?" She yelled at me to provoke a reaction so my mom would have to hear it. I felt myself turn red, but my mom just ignored all her comments. "Only you could have used it, who else?" My mom told her. "It can't be that you're so blind." Ana Lilia said and went into her room. The good thing is that this only happened when my sister was angry. When she wasn't, she didn't say anything. I remember one afternoon when I didn't have a karate academy and when they arrived, my mom didn't feel like cooking, which happened frequently, because she came home tired from work and didn't like to get into the kitchen. So she invited us to dinner. I was wearing jeans, my tennis shoes, a t-shirt, and my Paris hoodie, which I never had to hide because it was a gift from my dad. The thing is, I didn't look particularly manly that night. We arrived at the restaurant, they sat us down, they served us water and the waiter began, as usual, by asking my mom, "Would the lady like to order an aperitif? A vodka tonic for me, please. For the young lady?" Addressing my sister. "For me a Coke, please. And for the pretty girl?" I didn't even think about it. I answered with my most feminine gesture and smile. "For me a 7-Up, thanks." The waiter left and silence reigned at the table for a few seconds. My mom changed the subject and started talking about the new production in which she was going to be an associate producer and her relationship with Adolf, which seemed to be going very well. Now I understand that my mom was in total denial. She just didn't want or couldn't see what was going on with me. As I said before, we are talking about a time when the concept of gender was not even known, and being homosexual was one of the worst shames that could exist in a family. Even so, a few days later my mom took advantage of a moment when we were alone to give me her acceptance speech that went something like this. "My friend Betty told me about her cousin. Do you remember her? A very tall one." "No." "Well, she, a few years ago adopted a baby and when the baby turned 4, she organized his party with his classmates from kindergarten, and well, you know, everyone brought him gifts." I listened to her without understanding where she was going with her talk. Well, when the guests left, the boy was sad, and she asked him if he hadn't liked his party. My mom continued. The boy told his mother, yes, but I don't know why nobody gave me even a doll. I still didn't understand why she told me that. So the boy wanted a doll? And why didn't his mom buy it for him? I asked for it. Well, yes, his mother with that understood that the child was strange, homosexual, and then what a pity. But if she has a child like that, there's no way to stop loving him. Of course, it must have been easier for her, because the child was adopted. At about that time I understood that my mom's story was intended to be her acceptance speech. In a few words, if you are homosexual, it would be a shame, but I would have to continue loving you, although it would be easier if you were adopted. That was not all. A few days later, Adolfo went to visit the house and at night I heard them arguing. Nope. That cannot be. How do you tell him that you would still love him? Well, what else can I do? We have to get that out of his head. He has to become a man, please. If not, we will be the laughing stock of society. But who cares? My mom asked. Everyone cares. God cares, said the religious fanatic. Leave it to me, either he'll take away his queerness or he'll go with his father to see what he does with his weirdo. As you can imagine, it was not a good night. To the conflicts that I already had, this feeling of rejection was added. Until that moment, I had thought several times about leaving with my father and my brother, but on the one hand, I felt that it would be a kind of betrayal for my mother, and on the other hand, it meant stopping living there and separating myself from all my friends. Shortly before the end of the school year, there was one more event that made things even more complicated. If you like it, please like and subscribe. See you next week. Valeria Garza.